Welcome to Kaizen Talks, where we explore ideas, stories, and the psychology behind the world around us. Let's grow, one conversation at a time.
You know, when you touch a hot stove, the feedback is, well, it's pretty instant.
Yeah, your hand just jerks right back.
Right. There's this sharp, highly localized physical ache, and your brain immediately goes, okay, let's absolutely never do that again.
It's totally binary and, completely objective.
Exactly. But, I mean, think about the last time you were, say, left off an invitation list for a dinner party. Or maybe you made a joke in a crowded meeting and it was just met with, absolute dead silence.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
It really is. You get this heavy ache in your chest, like a literal pit in your stomach. And suddenly, that clean, objective, physical feedback system, well, it seems entirely inadequate to explain what's actually happening inside your body.
Yeah, because it's not a physical burn.
Right. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are pulling apart the hidden machinery of that exact feeling. We're looking at, well, a pretty wild stack of research evolutionary biology, neuroscience, sociology, and even behavioral design.
And philosophy, too.
Yeah, philosophy, too. Basically, our mission today is to decode exactly why you care so much about what other people think of you.
It's such a fascinating collision of disciplines. I mean, taking brain scan data and pairing it with centuries-old philosophy.
Because we want to show you how this social wiring actually alters your literal physical brain chemistry and the cognitive illusions that warp how you see yourself.
And ultimately, how human beings have historically tried to cope with the inevitable suffering that all of this causes.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we can really understand how we interact with society, we need to establish why we are biologically, forced to care in the first place.
Yeah, evolutionary biology gives us a pretty stark starting point here, specifically with the social brain hypothesis.
This is the Robin Dunbar stuff, right?
Exactly. Dunbar pioneered this concept, and it honestly fundamentally changes how you view human interaction. He realized that if you look at mammals, the size of their neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher order thinking, it directly predicts the typical size of their social group.
Because keeping track of everyone is just like a massive cognitive load.
Right. Knowing who is friends with whom, who owes a favor, who your rivals are, that requires immense computational power.
So if you run the math on human brain size, what does the biology actually say our group limit is?
Well, the regression equation predicts a core social group of about 150 people.
Dunbar's number.
You got it. Dunbar's number. And the wild part is that this isn't just some, theoretical average floating in an academic paper somewhere. When sociologists actually look at the data, this number is just everywhere.
Like where?
Well, you see it in the average size of hunter-gatherer tribes, the size of historical farming villages, even the maximum cap of guilds in massive multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft.
Oh, wow. Even in video games.
Yeah, it's hardwired. We are built for a very specific scale of community.
But these relationships, they aren't just a flat list of 150 people, right? It's more structured than that.
Yeah, they operate in fractal layers. It radiates outward. You have your closest 5 people, your absolute inner circle, then maybe 15 good friends, 50 associates, 150 in your core network.
And then it just loosely expands out to 500 acquaintances.
Right. But the thing is, keeping those 150 people cooperating together, that isn't easy. Evolution needed a mechanism to basically force humans to stick together.
Because human infants are born incredibly immature.
Exactly. We're helpless compared to other mammals. A solitary early human was, well, a dead human. So to prevent the fatal consequences of social separation, the brain's social attachment system essentially hot-wired the existing physical pain system.
Okay, I want to spend some time on this because the mechanism here is absolutely mind-blowing. Let's talk about Dr. Naomi Eisenberger's research.
Oh, the cyberball study.
Yeah. She put participants inside an fMRI scanner so they're lying completely still in this loud claustrophobic tube and had them play a virtual ball-tossing game called Cyberball on a little screen.
Which is just like 3 little stick figures throwing a digital ball.
Right. It's a completely meaningless, incredibly low-stakes game. But at first, the other 2 virtual players toss the ball to the human subject. But eventually, they just stop.
The computer is programmed to just completely exclude the human.
Exactly. They are left out of a virtual game by literal faceless avatars. And yet, the scan shows that the exact same regions of the brain that process the acute distress of physical pain, specifically the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, they light up like a fire alarm.
Yeah, the overlap isn't just a metaphor. It is deeply anatomical.
Which is wild.
It is. Evolution didn't bother to, invent a brand new emotional system for social distress. It just piggybacked on the exact pathways that alert you to a broken leg.
And the proof of how intertwined these systems are, I mean, it comes from the interventions they use, right? The Tylenol study.
Oh, this is one of the most stunning studies in the
Sure.
entire field. So participants took regular over-the-counter Tylenol acetaminophen for 3 weeks.
Wait, really? Just standard drugstore painkillers.
Just standard anti-inflammatory painkillers. And not only did these people report fewer hurt feelings in their daily lives, but when researchers put them back in the scanner during that same cyberball exclusion game, they actually showed reduced neural activity in those exact social pain regions.
So a drug designed for a headache literally mistakenly targets heartache.
Yes. The chemical pathways overlap perfectly.
Okay, wait, I'm struggling with this a bit because pain is data, right? If I touch a hot stove, I need to feel that burn so I don't destroy my hand.
Right, it's a survival mechanism.
So if social pain is this vital evolutionary adaptation meant to keep us safely inside our group of 150, shouldn't we want to feel it? Isn't numbing a broken heart with Tylenol dangerously hacking our survival instincts, like taking the batteries out of a smoke detector?
Well, that is a profound tension, and
Right.
researchers definitely acknowledge the danger there. On one hand, yes, that pain is an evolutionary alarm bell signaling a threat to your very survival. You need the alarm. But on the other hand, our modern environment triggers this alarm constantly, in ways evolution never ever intended. And consider the reverse intervention. Researchers actually induced artificial physical inflammation in subjects using an endotoxin.
So they basically tricked the body into thinking it was fighting off a severe infection.
Exactly. And the subjects immediately reported intense feelings of social disconnection. Their brains became hypersensitive to any sign of social exclusion.
Wow, so the systems are a two-way street.
Yeah, physical sickness makes us feel socially isolated, which is probably an evolutionary push to retreat so we don't infect the group.
And conversely, doesn't the data show that just holding a partner's hand reduces physical pain?
It does. Even just looking at a photograph of a romantic partner measurably reduces the physical sensation of pain.
Okay, so we are biologically hijacked, we must stay in our group to survive, and our brain will literally torture us with physical agony if we don't.
That's the biological reality, yeah.
But that forces a massive question. How do we actually figure out who we are inside that group? Because when sociologists look at this, they argue that we basically just use other people as mirrors.
Right, and we can trace this idea back to Charles Cooley. He coined the concept of the looking glass self.
The looking glass self.
Yeah, Cooley proposed that identity does not develop in a vacuum. You don't just, sit alone in a room and decide who you are. It's this highly subjective three-step interpersonal process.
Okay, what are the 3 steps?
First, you imagine how you appeared to the people around you. Second, you imagine their judgment of that appearance. And third, you develop feelings about yourself, like pride or deep shame based entirely on that imagined judgment.
The crucial word there being imagined, right?
Absolutely.
We aren't seeing ourselves as others actually see us. We are seeing ourselves as we believe they see us.
Which leaves immense room for error. And Erving Goffman pushed this idea even further with his framework on the presentation of self in everyday life. Goffman argued that identity isn't some internal static essence.
It's a performance.
Exactly. It's an ongoing theatrical performance. He divided our social world into 2 distinct regions, the front stage and the backstage.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the front stage is the curated, polished public persona, right? Where you deliver your lines to the audience.
Precisely. And the backstage is where the audience is absent, the curtain drops, and you can finally break character and relax.
Like a waiter in a high-end restaurant.
That's the perfect example.
In the dining room, the front stage, they are impeccably polite, practically gliding across the floor. But the moment they push through those swinging doors into the kitchen, the backstage, they slump their shoulders, drop the polite voice, and just complain bitterly about the customers.
Right, because the audience is gone. And George Herbert Mead builds on this by breaking the self into 2 parts, the I and the me.
Okay, how does that work?
The I is the spontaneous subjective part of you, but the me is the objective socialized filter. It's literally an amalgamation of all the attitudes, rules, and judgments of everyone around you, internalized into a voice in your head.
But wait, if Goffman and Mead are right, and identity is just this, collection of performances rewritten by the audience in real time, does this mean there is no true authentic self at all? Are we just an endless series of masks?
Well, through the lens of symbolic interactionism, yes. A self is not something you inherently possess. It's a process. It's something attributed to you by an audience after a successful performance.
Wow. Okay, but if life is a constant performance for our social group, you need a way to know if you're getting good reviews.
You need metrics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we measure if our performance is actually succeeding? Which brings us to Leon Festinger's social comparison theory from 1954.
Right. Festinger hypothesized that humans have an insatiable drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities.
But in many areas of life, there's no objective stopwatch or physical ruler to measure your worth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when objective reality goes silent, the brain resorts to social comparison as this kind of last resort cognitive procedure. But, and this is key, we don't compare ourselves to just anyone.
Festinger called this the similarity hypothesis, right?
Yeah, the similarity hypothesis. We only compare ourselves to near peers.
It's like playing a video game where your own score counter is broken, so you just frantically look at the screen of the player sitting next to you.
That is exactly it.
I mean, think about your own Strava feed. If you're a casual weekend runner, you don't compare your 5K time to an Olympic runner like Eliud Kipchoge.
No, looking at his time gives you zero useful data about yourself.
Right. You compare yourself to the guy in your neighborhood who runs roughly the same pace as you. It's the exact same reason Duolingo doesn't throw you onto a global leaderboard of 50 million users. They place you in a microleague of exactly 30 near peers.
Because the brain only cares about the immediate hierarchy. And the choice of who you look at triggers what psychologists call the contrast versus assimilation effect.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Let's say you look at someone performing slightly better than you, an upward comparison. This can produce diametrically opposite emotional results depending on one key factor, and that's attainability.
Meaning, do I think I can actually reach their level?
Exactly. If you perceive their higher status as attainable, you assimilate. You feel motivated. You think, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
But if it's unattainable?
Then you experience contrast. You feel despair, inadequacy, and a huge hit to your self-esteem.
Which perfectly explains the big fish, little pond effect. The data shows that really smart students actually have lower academic self-concepts in highly elite, rigorous schools than equally smart students in lower achieving schools.
Because they're constantly comparing themselves to a concentrated pool of geniuses.
Right. But hang on, the sources say that adding a clean objective metric reduces the demand for social comparison. So to stop feeling envious or anxious, shouldn't we just gamify our entire lives with objective personal metrics?
I mean, it sounds logical, but so much of what makes human life meaningful fundamentally resists objective measurement. How do you objectively score being a good parent?
Oh yeah, you really can't.
Or a supportive friend? Or a good artist? In those highly subjective domains, social comparison is basically the only crude tool the brain has left to figure out if you're doing a good job.
But this entire system assumes our perception of others is actually accurate. What happens when the tools we use to measure ourselves are just completely broken by our own cognitive biases?
Well, then you get the spotlight effect.
Right, because we are obsessed with comparing ourselves, but we view the world through deeply distorted lenses. Tell us about the spotlight effect.
It's this fascinating egocentric bias rooted in psychological anchoring. Because you are hyper-aware of your own internal anxieties, your own messy hair or a tiny stain on your shirt, you anchor the rest of the world to that perspective.
You vastly overestimate how much other people are noticing you.
Yes. And the classic study on this is the Cornell Vanilla Ice experiment.
Which just sounds like sheer torture to me.
Oh, it was definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Researchers forced college students to walk late into a crowded room wearing a highly embarrassing T-shirt featuring the 90s pop star Vanilla Ice.
I can't even imagine.
The students wearing the shirt were mortified. They estimated that at least half of the room noticed and judged them for it.
But what did the data actually show?
Almost no one noticed. The audience was too deeply absorbed in their own internal worlds to care about someone else's T-shirt.
Wow. We should also mention the minority spotlight effect here, which carries a much heavier emotional toll.
Yes, absolutely.
When individuals from marginalized groups are in a room and a topic relating to their demographic arises, they feel hypersalient. They are acutely thrust into a spotlight bearing the sudden weight of perceived group judgment.
Why, that is exhausting.
It really is. And now, we've taken all of these deeply flawed, highly sensitive human brains and plugged them into modern technology.
Social media.
Exactly. It acts as this quantified mirror.
Yeah, because traditional face-to-face interaction relies on incredibly subtle, nonverbal cues. But digital platforms strip all of that nuance away and replace it with quantified, public appraisals.
It basically collapses Goffman's front stage and backstage until there's no room left to relax.
Precisely. And it supercharges that spotlight effect, creating a brutal feedback loop. A high like count delivers effective validation, a literal dopamine hit telling your brain the tribe accepts you, you are safe.
And a low count triggers social dysphoria.
Right. We become obsessed with checking the mirror. But the mirror lies to us thanks to the self-enhancement bias.
Our looking glass is race-tinted, right?
Very much so. We accurately recall positive feedback, but completely discredit or forget negative remarks to protect our ego.
Wait, so let me get this straight. We are obsessively terrified of what people think of us because of the spotlight effect, but they aren't even looking because they're too busy worrying about what we think of them.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's like a room full of people secretly staring into their own compact mirrors, assuming everyone else is watching them.
That is a tragically accurate way to put it. Everyone is anchored to their own perspective, seeking validation from people who are equally distracted.
Okay, so what does this all mean? We are biologically driven to connect, but doing so traps us in a subjective mirror, endless comparison, and anxiety over imaginary spotlights.
It sounds bleak.
It does. How have humans historically tried to cope with the inevitable suffering this causes?
Well, history gives us a whole menu of philosophical escape routes. And, we should state clearly here that we are just impartially reporting these viewpoints. We're not endorsing any single one as the absolute truth.
Right, we're just laying out the options. Let's start with the Stoics.
So Stoicism says, accept the suffering. Align yourself with nature. The core idea is that tranquility comes from a profound realization that external events, like the opinions of others, don't inherently hurt you.
It's your judgment of them that hurts you.
Exactly. Virtue is sufficient for happiness. If you control your internal reaction, the crowd can't touch you.
Then we have hedonism, which is basically avoid suffering.
Right. The good life is a life of pleasure. Though, as Epicurus noted, it's not just about wild partying. The highest pleasure actually requires virtue, knowledge, and good friends.
Okay, moving east, we find Buddhism.
Buddhism diagnoses the root cause of this suffering as attachment and ignorance. Specifically, the misguided notion of an enduring independent self.
The self is an illusion.
Yes, it's made of non-human parts like bones and ever-changing thoughts. Insight into this illusion removes the fetters of anger and jealousy because there is no permanent you to be insulted.
Wait, even that George Herbert Mead said the self is just a social process and Buddhism says the self is an illusion. Is Buddhism actually the most scientifically accurate approach to escaping the looking glass self?
It's a really profound parallel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mead's sociological self aligns beautifully with the Buddhist concept of the illusory self.
And what about the fourth escape route, existentialism?
Existentialism says, embrace the suffering. The universe is indifferent. As Sartre famously said, existence precedes essence.
You are condemned to be free.
Yes, you must define your own meaning. But Sartre's humanism adds that when you make a choice, you choose on behalf of all mankind, which is a massive responsibility.
Wow. So Stoicism is putting on emotional armor. Hedonism is avoiding the battlefield. Buddhism is realizing the battlefield is just a hologram. And existentialism is grabbing a sword and drawing your own map.
That's a great summary.
Let's briefly recap the journey we've taken you on today. We learned that you're biologically tethered to a group of 150 people. We build our identities using those people as mirrors. We torture ourselves with broken comparisons and imaginary spotlights.
But we have thousands of years of philosophy to help us navigate the maze.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought for you to mull over. If our brains evolved to use the pain of social rejection to force us to cooperate, what happens to the future of human evolution if we invent a perfectly calibrated neurochemical off switch for all social suffering?
A pill for social pain.
Yeah. If a pill could make us completely immune to what others think, would humanity finally be free, or would society completely collapse? Think about that next time you feel that literal ache of being left out. It's there for a reason. Until next time.
Subscribe to Kaizen Talks, where every conversation makes us a little better than yesterday. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, keep growing.